NYX Professional Makeup Silicone Applicator for the Plump Right Back Plumping Serum and Primer, and we got the travel size as well. We had done a little shooting earlier today, so what we had put on our face was, of course, moisturizer and the Charlotte Tilbury blurring cream, and then we got the LA Girl Pro Conceal in Fairest in the highlight places, and then just for the sake of camera, we patted on some NYX Can't Stop Won't Stop mattifying powder in the color tan, the darkest of two colors that I own that in combination with that very fair concealer kind of restored human color, right? And so from here I thought we might eventually get into this just lovely Just a Crush Morphe palette, which has these lovely neutrals and mattes, and then these shimmer colors that are Color Story, which includes like a shimmery pink, a shimmery copper, some, you know, calmer bone and maroon shimmers. But, you know, I think we could do something pretty. But look how lovely this palette mirror is. You just peel off this kind of translucent sticker and we've got a great mirror. So we're going to get into that. So I thought we might bronze to give our face more structure since we've underpainted with highlighting concealer. We have two tones of Physicians Formula Butter Bronze. We have a lighter and a darker. Should we experiment with the lighter? Let's try that. And let's try to get into a brush that is on the slender side, right? We have this Elf Flawless Concealer brush, right? It's a little bit smaller than this Morphe M335, just a little bit. It's a little bit denser and shorter, but let's see what we can do with that. We also have some smaller like eyeshadow brushes. I wonder if we should go even smaller. Let's try the smaller brush, because I think one thing that I've been looking at is how kind of muddled and kind of wide some of the lines that I put on my face can be, and that's maybe not what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to get a little bit more precise in my application. So this is a delicious smelling and well used bronzer. But just looking at our face in our mirror, hope you can see me, swirl our brush in our product and think about, you know, what's nice about this mirror is it has 3 panels, so you can see yourself straight on and then at an angle as well. And just, you know, that place where you would put your contour kind of toward the top of the ear and the middle of the ear to create structure, right? Thinking about that point where you could possibly stick a hole through your cheek to your teeth, right, where your molars are, and kind of hugging that cheekbone. You can feel your cheekbone just under there, and, you know, thinking of our friends who do drag and how, you know, very strongly they apply their contour. Let's, you know, let's not be shy. Really build that color on that cheekbone. And then other side. How are you doing today? Are you are you living in your, you know, makeup look for the day? Are you, you know, finding some epiphanies about technique and where color can and should be built, you know, to go up, a lifting gesture, but really create some shadow that will imply more structure to the face than maybe you're starting out with, right? Is your bronzer color something that is a little too warm for contour? Are you comfortable with that? Is it kind of marrying into the tones of your nude shirt of the day? I'm trying to lean into my nudes and blushes for 2022 just to give a little bit of identity to how I'm doing my lives and videos on my channel. it's a work in progress for sure, but you know, I'm definitely enjoying it and I'm learning a lot. Another thing that people in the drag community do is they very aggressively paint out any double chin, so you're left with a stronger structure for your jawline, and you know, you're kind of shading out any waffles and syrup, any delicious croissants with almond paste inside. What is your favorite treat? You know, sometimes I feel like my treats are so good I forget that they're treats. They're so like yummy and, you know, kind of feed your emotions as well as your body. So just very carefully putting that contour on the nose just to hug that highlighting that we did earlier, right? We don't want it to be anything so dark that it's distracting and looks strange, but we also don't want it to be so pale and timid that we don't get an effective contour on our nose, right? Part of my impulse is always to go with darker shades for contouring, but you know, in 2022 we're trying to see what's enough contrast to give us contour, right? We don't want to be super clockable in daylight, but we also don't want to look like we've done nothing, right? And we don't want to use a brush that's so broad that we end up with, you know, something that's too low and too kind of imprecise. We don't want it to go where we don't want it, but we don't want it to read like nothing. And I think that, you know, given a lot of what my work is, I tend to go very kind of light and almost imperceptible for my contour. And you can also, you know, wash that same contour shade down your neck. You know, one thing when you're getting your clothing on and off, I highly recommend having a very generous, silky, if not silk, scarf to cover your face and anywhere that you've put, you know, color, so that you can cover your face, get that, you know, clothing on or off, and just, you know, putting that into the crease of our eye, a little above our crease since we're a hooded eye person. You know, just so that you're able to kind of maneuver and not disturb your clothing or disturb your makeup. You know, and this is especially important when you're on set, because a lot of people don't think about you and your needs around, you know, protecting your face or protecting your hair, protecting your clothing from your hair and your makeup, but also protecting your makeup from your hair and your clothing. Things can go very wrong. So we're drawing that bronzer across the crease, right? And it's a matte bronzer, there's no shimmer. Kissing it back to our lash line, but also bringing it into our nose contour. Can you see that on camera? I hope so. I have put on 2 ring lights and my mirror light. I'm very much thinking of investing in a much larger lit mirror. So then what I would do is probably do my makeup toward the mirror and shoot into the mirror. Does that sound good, or does that sound crazy? You know, I've watched the price of this particular mirror go down, and it may, I hope, be even lower now. That would be a win for me. You know, we're always trying to hold on to our coins, but we also want to enhance what we're trying to do creatively, right? We want to have what we need and not waste anything. But I find that this mirror is great for light, but it's perhaps a little too low and it's too close to the camera. I like that it has 3 different panels, but I don't end up using the other panels. So now we're just going to draw some of this bronzer into the hairline. You know, I think if you use a larger brush, you're done more quickly, but I feel like with my technique, I tend to kind of get too broad an area with my bronzer, and then it just ends up making my whole face look muddy, right? You don't want to lose your highlighting, you don't want to lose your contouring, but you do want to keep in mind that sort of mental map of what you think you're trying to do, right? Building that bronzer on the cheek, right? Building it underneath and around the chin, drawing it down the neck, and, you know, taking a good look at what we've done. Do we need to add another layer of highlighter, right? At this point, it might be a good idea just to highlight under the eyes again and down the center of the nose, just to make sure that we're in the right place structure-wise, right? So putting this brush aside and putting our bronzer back, let us get a very slender brush, right? We've been trying to be good about washing our brushes and not, you know, not being filthy about that. We do have a few more brushes drying, but let's see if we can work with one of these. We have our little cart that we were able to, I think we had gotten this from one of our neighbors during the holidays, so this is where some of our brushes live. And, you know, certainly I have very broad brushes, but I don't know that I'm there in terms of, my technique, that I could use something so broad. Drink cups from Set with lids to keep my clean brushes inside, but, you know, they're a little ventilated, and I do try to cover them. There's a lot of dust in California that can mess up your stuff. You don't want that. But when you're just getting a little bit of this LA Girl Pro Concealer in Fairest into our dish, right? And we're going to use just that little bit to paint our, let's clean up the applicator, paint back our highlighting. I don't know about you, but I can clearly do makeup stuff for hours. This is very interesting to me, and I've been observing the technique of people in the drag community, you know, and I'd gotten my makeup done by a very nice gentleman in December, and he did this very clear center line down my nose, and it was impressive. It didn't look so fantastic in real life, but it looked fire in pictures. So that made me a fan. So just painting out, you know, hold your mirror away and just see where you might have more darkness than you would like. And use that highlighting concealer just to create some places where you bring more light and more brightness, especially in the center of your face. Any areas that recede that you want to bring forward, like my weak chin, you know, that is what, in combination, our contour and highlight is there to do. It's to allow us to very gently guide the eye to restructure parts of our face. There's nothing wrong, but, you know, it's almost like we're stylizing what we have naturally, right? Stylizing it. Are we reverse contouring the nose? Are we contouring the nose? Should we paint out the sides of the nose and just bring more brightness under the eye, especially inside? But really the star of the show today is going to be that Morphe eyeshadow palette. You know, we're trying to get into all of our palettes and see what they can do. See what they're all about. See what color story and you know, the kind of vibrancy and energy they might bring to our face. Now, we had put 2 lines of that delightful MAC Teddy under the corner of our eye earlier. And let's just use whatever is left on this brush to enhance that dark double line, right? And also lift the corner of our eye. You know, I see people painting all of their contour up into the temple area, and I feel like on my face it just looks suspicious to have completely dark temple area. I feel like the temple should get a little bit bright, because you want, or I want, you know, a skull shape, right? Our skulls are not perfectly kind of, I feel like we have more of a cranium and then face, right? Cranium, skull, where your brain is, and then, you know, the structure around your cheekbone. I don't know if that area should just be flat, as it were. I don't know. That's just my theory. I like a little brightness in this temple area. So just using this very squishy silicone sponge to bounce this concealer in. You know, I'm very delighted with what Teddy looks like on my skin tone. You know, I'm very pleased that Meghan Markle shared that little tidbit, because, you know, I think there are dupes for Teddy, and I also think that there are, you know, ways in which we're encouraged to use these more flat colors, like colors that are simply brown or simply black, and that maybe isn't the most flattering or eye-catching thing, especially for day, right? Black is great at night, but if you're at work, you don't want to wear green. You don't want to wear something that looks so, in a way, unnatural. You want to wear something that will give you more color and brightness and beauty. You want something that, in a way, you know, the color is beautiful on its own. It doesn't need to be so super black or so super dark, right? Maybe let's drag that across our lids. You know, and this is what I mean by this concealer being, you use a very small amount, you let it dry down to some extent. The finish is very nice, right? It's not super powdery or super dry. We're just bringing it under our contour, backing up our mirror and taking a look, right? Our forehead is contoured. Now, we want to be very careful to keep this center line discreet. We don't want to blend it out, because that crispness is what gives us our optical illusion, right? If need be, we can powder over it, but that contrast, that very strong contrast with our contour, is what's going to give us, you know, some really amazing definition and structure on our nose. Now, that bronzer was light enough, but it was also quite warm. That may not be the ideal shade for contour for us. Now we have a moment where we can go into our little cup of contour and find this Essence Contouring Duo palette, right? We have two tones in here that are quite cool and not warm, and maybe we can dig into them to enhance our contour, right? If we use that same brush and look at what we've done, should we switch brushes? We certainly have enough brushes to do that. Some kind of narrow brush, nothing too fancy, just trying to exploit all of the brush assets that we have collected. Maybe let's use this. It's an unlabeled brush, but it has a broad side and a narrow side, right? Looking in our mirror, and maybe let's try the pale one, see what that does on the nose, right? Give us a cooler toned but pale shade, right? Let's pat that along that nose highlight, and that's appreciably darker, right? In the pan it doesn't look super dark, and I'm telling you, this is the lightest shade in this Essence Contour Palette. And very carefully draw along that line. It's quite dark. I'm shocked. And maybe let's go across the crease of our eye again. Right? We suffered the tragedy of lacking depth in a couple of our eyeshadow palettes where we really didn't get enough of a deep payout at this lash line and in our outer corner. So this might be a good base for that. Dragging our brush across this again, and then we're going to enhance that contour. You know, I've been getting into my makeup. I can't tell you. I've been doing a bit more fine art painting as well. And it's been just so rewarding because, you know, sometimes makeup artists have worked on me at work, and they really are very painterly about it. They do give your face that, you know, well, let's look at it from far away and then let's go back in, right? Look at it from far away and then paint a stronger jawline, right? Far away, and then paint out any kind of double chin, bring it down the neck. Look at it from far away. Deepen up that jawline and hopefully cool it out with this cooler contouring palette. You know, sometimes I get into wanting to use cream contour, but you know, some of these powder contour shades can be quite lovely and quite, you know, just the right amount of cool tone and the right amount of control. Because sometimes blending in bronzer and that sort of thing can kind of get beyond your control, right? Smaller brush, trying to be precise about placement, right? It almost feels like, oh, should I use another brush to blend the edges like an eyeshadow, right? Something like this Morphe brush, but maybe something that is a little bit less. This is a foundation brush. Is this too big? Here is a Morphe M554. I think this is a powder brush. What is the right brush? Okay, I'm going to put away this contouring palette. I was very lucky to get it. They're hard to find, but I got that at Ulta. And then looking at another one of our, here's a Jackie and Lauren. It's a very sizable eyeshadow brush, but let's see if we can use it to blur the edges of this contour, right? Working on the nose and just brushing away any excess and being careful not to modify that center line, right? Up and down, just getting rid of any kind of like blurring or, you know, when things start to fan out across the face. And that's why I kind of shy away from using like the biggest brushes for contour, especially because things can go awry very, very quickly. And then just working on the edges of our contour on our right side and then the upper edge, and, you know, really kind of trying to marry that in without eliminating it, right? Same thing other side. Just blurring the edges, smoothing them out to achieve what John McClane, for whatever his faults may be, the concept that he named seamlessness, right? You don't want it to seem like such a harsh painting on of color that begins and ends. You want your eye to be fooled into thinking that perhaps this is naturally occurring shadow, right? Naturally occurring shadow that might be a tone that occurs naturally on your face that might marry into the eyeshadow and blush to come. And then reviewing that forehead, looking at, have we achieved that 3 shape of contour from the jawline up to the cheekbone, up to the forehead, other side, from the jawline up to the cheekbone, up to the forehead, and just maintaining that lightness down the center of the nose and the face. And I think we're good. Now, that nose contour is looking suspicious. I hesitate to put more product on the sides of the nose, but clearly we have our contour strongly built on both cheekbones, right? It looks kind of bronzed. Our chin is more prominent. The center line of our nose is more prominent. I think we're ready to get into our eyeshadow palette, right? We do have some product left on this little brush. It seems to be out of our dish, but let's see if we can fade out the sides of this nose contour to an extent, right? Trying to make it even. Not to eliminate it, but just to take the broadness out of it so that it reads more like slender lines. If you've ever seen Scott Barnes contour Tati Westbrook's nose, now she doesn't have a nose that seems to need much contouring, but again, just observing that technique. Why this set of slender lines on the bridge of the nose creates such a powerful optical illusion, I don't know that I understand yet, but I'm just trying to get in the game and see if I can benefit from the logic, right? It's like when you learn to drive. You may not understand all the rules, but you'll certainly benefit from knowing the rules, right? Another thing that people do in drag makeup, right? Instead of having their lines go straight up and down vertically, they actually angle the darker contour lines together. Now, as women, we have smaller nose and less nose real estate to work with, but I think it's an interesting concept to have that center line and the lines next to it narrow at the bottom, because we have so much more volume in the bottom of our noses. In any case, we can probably put this delightful mirror away and then just work with our Just a Crush palette from Morphe. So delightful. So we have pre-paired our lids with concealer and with powder contour, and I think that we are in a good place to lay down a transition shade, and maybe this palest color here, if we're not going to use these brushes again, I try to, give all my brushes that I'm holding on to some exercise, right? And I'm not saying like, oh, I'm such an expert of knowing what's the right brush in every instance, but you can kind of ballpark and see brushes that might be able to work for a purpose. And unless things go terribly wrong, it's also that we're trying to get to the point where we're eliminating brushes or moving them over into our painting practice, right? We certainly have a lot of nice, interesting brushes, and not all of them are high-end brushes, but, we do try to keep some, if I can use a sports analogy, some depth on the bench. You never know when brushes might be dirty, or you might, just need something to experiment with, right? And if you, like me, spent time in quarantine kind of getting yourself together, we're just going to use this Vivace brush, which is so random, just to run this lightest shadow across our crease and down onto the lid. Maybe we should have tapped that off first, but tally-ho, we're in the thick of it. This is a very interesting color. From the palette, it looks a little bit more beige, but on my skin, it's very much reading as like a pale pink. So we've successfully applied that above our natural crease, other side, and we've run it along the top of where we put that contour and bronzer. And this brush has a lot of surface area. So we're able to kind of like roll it to get what looks like an even application of this color, right? Getting rid of any creasing, building a shape that reaches out toward the tail end of that brow. This has such nice color payoff, and it's such a fluffy, dry brush that I feel like we can effectively make small circles holding the brush at the tip so that we're being as gentle as possible. But I think that has built into a gesture that works very nicely, and even on its own looks rather pretty. You know, what we're doing is unfortunately rubbing off of our earlier application of Teddy eyeliner, but that's okay, because we can build it back, right? Just like President Joe Biden suggests. Should we kiss a little bit of this underneath the eye? I'm not a big under eye shadow girl, but you know, we're experimenting. But I think this is a beautiful shadow that I would not have guessed would look like this on my eye. Leaving the brow, the area just under the brow untouched. Now, a hooded eye person, our next thing to focus on is that outer crease. We want a brush that is precise and has some flex. You know, a short pencil brush almost would be too stiff, but using something with a similar shape, a no-name brush, simply essential something, most of the lettering is rubbed off, but this looks right, to just run a color along very precisely that outer corner of the eye. Now what shall it be? If this is reading pink and we have a brown and somewhat of a purple over here, if we go, we also have this kind of shimmer, but if we go purple, then our inner corner shimmer could be pink, or it could be this, it looks like a pale gold. Or if we go brown, we could go rust. It seems like the brown would be quite dark. If we go brown, we could go rust. We haven't done rust this week, so let's go brown. Let's get our brush into that shadow, dance it around, gently knock it off, and hooded eye technique, stamp it along that lash line and along that upper part of the corner. Do you see that? You're drawing a V. Again, along that, just the V, not really even in the crease. Kissing that crease, kissing that lash line, but creating a fine point at the outermost end of that lash line. Trying to be precise. Powder products will drift. There will be a blend to come, but that's where we want it to be. We want it to be at the outer corner. Have you built a corner? Have you left some space in the center of that V? That's what we're going for. It's tough with a hooded eye. We don't have the biggest outer corner there is. I do admire people with like a lot of lid space, but you know, try to keep your eye open. Look down in your mirror and keep your eye as open as possible. Stamp that color on. You're building architecture in that outer corner of your eye, right? You see people making all these big sweeping motions and circles. I think that's fine for your establishing shadow color, but really what you want to do, and see already your work is almost completely done by just putting that color precisely where it belongs. If you were from here to take a larger fluffy brush and just buff out the edges of that shade, right? Tipping into our collection of brushes and touching a man's brush with a troubled history, Jeffree Star, apologies have been made, skepticism remains, but again, we were able to get these brush collections for super cheap. during quarantine. And that's when we started developing our kit and our nascent technique. It's just beginning to grow our technique. We're not the most expert person in the world, right? We're not wanting to blur this out. We're just wanting to make it a little bit less harsh in that outer corner. Corner, corner. Rock that corner. Other side. Corner, corner. Corner, corner. Because this eyeshadow technique is what's going to separate you from someone who doesn't have makeup on. It's going to make you look like you're fancy and purposeful with your eyeshadow application, that you've thought about it and you had something to say with your shadow. I don't hate it. Do you hate it? Because I don't hate it. Anyway, from here, let's hurry up because we're hungry. We need to get some sort of paddle brush. It doesn't need to be the best brush. It doesn't need to be an expensive brush. Here we have a profusion brush that I'm sure came from some random palette and ended up in our little brush cup because we cleaned it. So we went brown with that outer corner shade, right? Just looking at whether it's even on both eyes, right? Maybe building a little bit more on this eye, and then going back, holding the tip of this Jeffree Star brush, and just blending, looking down into our mirror so that our blend looks even with the other eye, right? It's so incredible how the right brush and just giving some thought to technique can end up just being so beautiful. When I was a kid, I would look at the little diagram of what and where to put eyeshadow, and I did what I could. You know, I wasn't any kind of like expert, but we're using this kind of paddle brush to just rub across this rust shimmer. I don't think it's a glitter. And then stamp that across the bare places of our lid. And this reads more pink on my skin tone than I would have guessed. It looks rust in the pan, but on me, since I'm so yellow-orange, it reads far, far more pink. And that's interesting. Not so much fallout, but definitely more depth of color than I would have anticipated. And I don't know if I wanted all of that depth of color, but maybe we can blend some of it off, right? We do want the light of the shimmer, but we may not want all that color saturation, right? We haven't done anything more to create additional light in the inner 2/3 of the eye. The structure of our eye may not be right for halo eye. I never feel any impulse to create darkness in the inner corner of my eye. I might experiment with it one day, but I do like how all of these colors blend together, right? We started with bronzer and contour shade across that crease, and then we built over it this peach shade that reads more pink on my skin. Should we get another brush to blend with? Or should we use one of these brushes to blend with? Let's see if we can work with this brush that we had blended with earlier, just to get that edge to be a little less harsh, right? I'm not going to drag it into new areas, but we just want to see if it can just take it down a little bit so it doesn't look so Las Vegas stage. But it's hanging on pretty strongly. It doesn't seem to need any kind of primer, which is good, but you know, I don't think we anticipated having such a kind of red shimmer, but it's actually nice. Next time we'll try one of the paler shimmer shades, and maybe we'll just go across the perimeter of where the shimmer meets the other shadow, so it won't be such a harsh paint. Right, I do look with interest at how drag queens do a lot of geometry in their lid space, and it doesn't speak to me per se. It doesn't look like something that I want to do. If we use this brush that we use to paint on our center pale line, and just maybe we'll try getting into this palest shimmer and put that along this gnat. I have fruit in the house, and then here come the gnats. It's disturbing. Paint that on the inner tear duct, right? Inner tear duct. Needing light along that lash line. Other side. Inner tear duct. Applying light along that inner lash line, maybe dragging it in a little bit further. On the upper lash line, thin, and maybe making it a little bit of a point, almost like an inner corner flick, but an inner corner flick made of light. Not too broad, but definitely enough so that we don't lose brightness. Shimmer and brightness can be, you know, great in that inner corner, but that dark kind of red shimmer maybe doesn't give us all the light that we need. What do you think? I don't hate it, and I really do like the blend. That looks very, very pretty. It looks like more technique than I have at my disposal. Let's think about, let's get our other mirror. Let's go into our, we have two different Creme Shop palettes, right? We don't want to be super matchy-matchy, so we'll go palest shade and then go to some kind of blush brush and try to kind of, you know, meet the same weight that we have on our eyes, on our cheeks. We're definitely contoured, but if we get into that palest shade and it doesn't satisfy, then we can go to the next darkest shade. But let's try to see what we can do here, right? Just on that cheek in an upward gesture, right? We don't need the same weight and depth on our whole face, right? I think this particular blush is paler. It's very interesting because you can see it, but it's a paler weight than our contour, right? And we haven't gone in with a layer of foundation over our contour. Maybe that's something that we can consider doing, especially to obliterate this nose line. I don't hate it. And it's interesting because it's not super shimmery, but it has enough color and weight. This eyeshadow is stunning, by the way. You know, I saw this palette and I wasn't sure it was for me, but baby, it is for me. It's very much for me. I like it very much. Maybe we can, do we want to go in with the foundation? Or should we go in with some kind of, what do you call it? A BB cream. Something that's a little less weight. We just want to create a layer over this nose contour. So the nose contour is definitely there. It is very clearly there. It is not going to create any confusion about whether this nose is contoured, right? And I'm looking at myself in the side panel mirror. I feel like in a drag show, this would be left alone, right? Here's a medium deep BB cream from our friends at Garnier. That's what it's looking like. Get it in our dish. Put a little dot there and see how much of it we might need. This has a very messy applicator. And I had brought my damp beauty blender in with me, but where did I put it? That's always the dilemma. Where did it end up being? Because here's a dish of water, and here is this small dish with this right here. And now I don't know where I put my damn beauty blender. All my preparations, and here is where things end up. But you know, we've been working on our organization. We've been working on, you know, sort of knowing where things are as we work through our makeup. And I'm sure as soon as I finish this live, I'll figure out where it is. But right now, it has gone walkabout. Where, oh, where could it be? Well, in any case, we have our silicone sponge. And grab our handy dandy 3-panel mirror. This is a great mirror because it can sit on a table as well. We'll get a little tiny bit of this foundation on our beauty blender just so it's nice and sheer, and then dance that across the nose, right? We're not wanting to lift any product. We're just trying to not have that center line and all that business so obvious. And I think with a very, very thin layer, we definitely achieved that. Maybe let's see if we can tap a little bit under the eye just to sharpen up where that beautiful eyeshadow is sitting. You know, I remember years ago going for drinks at Bergdorf Goodman, which was along Central Park South. And, you know, a transgender woman did my makeup and put all tones of like red around my eyes. And I was shocked because, you know, I'd grown up in this, you know, sort of culture of, you know, the colors that go around your eyes are like browns and taupes, and your liner is always brown and black, maybe navy blue, but that would be rare, you know? You didn't want to look crazy, and you didn't want to look like you were doing too much or didn't know what you were doing. But the red, I still remember because I got drinks, I got my makeup done, I bought some stuff, and then I went to the MTV Christmas party with that makeup on, and it looked so fire. You know, we had just amazing parties back in the day, and you know, you always wanted to have your outfit and your makeup together, and that woman was definitely able and talented to get me together because, you know, as much as I'm sort of struggling with my makeup technique in the COVID times and trying to be proficient, especially as we, you know, work on set, in those days, I had, there wasn't even, you know, the amount of tutorials that we have now about how to apply makeup, and it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't that good either. And, you know, I'm always trying to spend time looking and learning and being better at everything I do, right? Whether that's cooking or makeup. You know, you don't want, you know, and I have to confess, like, one thing I think about when I do, you know, my makeup, or I get dressed, or I put on an earring, or, you know, I do anything, I always think about someone that I, shall we say, fancy seeing me do it, right? And would they be horrified, or would they be impressed? Would they think I was cute? Would they think I was struggling, you know, and kind of wanting to, not always, but, you know, in a very conscious way, think about, would this enhance my, what is it called? My wrap. Would this enhance my flex, right? If they saw me in this makeup, or, you know, out and about and I ran into them, right? You know how you look when you're embarrassed to find that someone that you know, or definitely if someone that you like is around to see you, right? That's where the rubber hits the road, right? Just applying very thin, bouncy layers of this BB cream in the medium deep tone. So again, medium deep tone for Caucasian people ends up being, I don't know, close to my tone. I struggle, right? You use black or Latin makeup products and the colorations are a certain way, and maybe you're on the paler end, but then when you use non people of non-color makeup, then you're one of the darker tones. And you know, that's what makes it such an interesting hunt and struggle, right? You work with your products, you work through them, you see what works for you, what achieves contour, what achieves highlighting, just leaving enough of that blush and that contour visible through the layers of this makeup, checking the coloration against the color of our neck, seeing if we can make that neck contour look more natural. We're headed to the gym to really get rid of that double chin. But, you know, and as much as I hate to let makeup go to waste, I am just loving, you know, I've been thinking of getting those. You see people do their makeup with cards or with shadow shields and all that, and it looks very exciting, you know, but, you know, some of them are quite pricey, and I'm like, well, can I just draw it that way? Do I need all that other equipment? I certainly have enough equipment already. Enough brushes. In my fantasy mind, I'm, you know, thinking about, well, how can I pare down this collection to the best things, the most effective things, the things that, you know, do me justice, do me honor, and don't create any kind of like embarrassing look. In as much as I'm starving, and I do have several colors of this very nice Elf, what is it called? Glossy Lip Stain. I would never have guessed. I would have guessed it was a lip gloss, but this is that power mauve color that we used earlier. Let's see if what we can do without even putting on a liner. This is a quite sheer, very pretty color. Right? It stays mobile for a little bit, right? I think we can use our finger just to get it into our right lip shape. We're not trying to overline. We have, through nature and heredity, we have quite enough lips to go into the lip arena and make a stand for us. You know, a sheer lip, right? Maybe dot whatever's left onto the cheek to create some color unity, right? The old school people used to put lipstick on and then dot it onto the cheek, get it across the nose, and there we have it. I think a pretty complete look that has inner corner light and the eyes. We've structured that outer corner so that when you blink and look around, it gives that very flirty drama that we like. I think we have a very harsh inner corner shimmer, right? And I kind of would think about that next time because it's such an opaque application. It doesn't look terrible, but, you know, I would like a little bit more subtlety, and I do think that that very thin line of inner corner, kind of a beige shimmer just does look arresting and pretty. Do we need to do anything else to lighten up the under eye? I don't think so. You know, but you do see the people on TikTok using their highlighting concealer to draw lines up from the corner of the mouth, up from the nose, up from the corner of the eye. And I can see the logic of that, but I think we've done a very able job. We've shrunken that forehead. We've contoured jaw, cheekbone, temple, and we've created a very powerful eye look. Do we need to restore eyeliner? I don't think so. We put a little bit of shadow under the eye, and we have tapped into the under eye area with this, I guess it's a BB cream. Yes. It's a Skin Renew Miracle Skin Perfector. Has SPF, which is good, in medium deep. You know, we certainly have gotten hold of different BB creams that have a more sheer application that have been less flattering on us, but I think we've done something nice here today. Thank you for joining me on my learning journey. I am starving to death, so I do want to hop into the kitchen and eat my boiled egg and salad and avocados, maybe a little goat cheese, and get the rest of the day going. But thank you again for joining me in my makeup experiments, and I will join you again soon and hopefully find my damp beauty blender wherever it's gone. Okay, thank you. Peace. House of Tanya. Camera ready. Now I am.